Yo, what is up everybody, it's Jelly Great here and welcome back to another Naruto reaction video here today. And today, after a seemingly long hiatus, we finally have a brand new video by the great Swagkage. And as you can tell by the title, this is, what if Rock Lee could use ninjutsu? Right, so Rock Lee was heralded for being one of the best taijutsu users in the history of the Naruto verse, right? Alongside his sensei and alongside his sensei's father. So, asking the question of what would Rock Lee be if he had ninjutsu is a quite intriguing one. So there's a few questions that must be asked that are quite ambiguous, clearly, since this is clearly only a hypothetical. Would he be able to multiply the AP of his said ninjutsu and overall attributes of ninjutsu with the 8 gates? Would not only his taijutsu increase, but would his ninjutsu capabilities increase as well? That's one question. Number two, what would he be capable of if he could use ninjutsu? How much higher caliber shinobi would Rock Lee be with ninjutsu under his arsenal? Right, being a part of his tool belt. Could he beat someone like Sasuke? Could he beat someone like Naruto or Shippuden, right? Early on, before the 6 past powers and all that. Would he be able to contend with the upper echelon shinobi within the Naruto verse? It's a very intriguing question because it is ambiguous and inconclusive since it never took place. So all we can do is speculate and give the best rational deduction on what most likely would happen if Rock Lee had ninjutsu. So I'm very intrigued to see what Swag has to say about this one. But before we begin, any less greatly appreciated. Hit that like button, turn on bell notifications to stay updated with yours truly. And if you're new and you enjoy, man, you messed with the kid, make sure to hit that sub button because once you do, become part of the family forever. But let's not waste any more time, screen. See what Swag has to say today.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Swagkage here.
What up?
And I brought 2 guests with me today. They're not new, though. If you've been to the channel before,
shout out to Six and Seth here, for sure.
In this video, y'all already know. What if Rock Lee could use ninjutsu?
Yes,
like,
sir.
what if he just wasn't only throwing hands? Like, what if it was like a fair game, and how would it go? So,
what if at the end of that fight, instead of the 5th gate kick, Lee just rammed the Chidori in the guard? What about that?
So I mean, like, one thing with the video we weren't really sure is, okay, if he could use jutsu, do we just give him like cool jutsu and just say, or like, what do we go over, like what you could learn, like headcanon?
Yeah, so this is a very vague question. It's extremely open-ended because, like, when we're talking about ninjutsu, that's like the most massive like field.
It's a wide spectrum
of like different abilities.
Wide spectrum of various abilities.
It encompasses pretty much all of the relevant stuff. There's so many ninjutsu, and so many of them work differently and could affect them differently. So, like, which ones you choose to give him change things, like how he would fight or how he would perform in certain fights drastically. And you'd also have to ask, like, which ninjutsu would it make sense for Rock Lee to learn in the first place? I don't think that Lee would be pulling up on anybody with like Edo Tensei, for example. That doesn't seem particularly in character. I think that stuff like
that only
shadow
people know.
clones, or as you guys saw in the thumbnail of the Rasengan, would kind of make sense for Lee, because he's like, when Guy and Kakashi talk about him during the tuning exams, and I mean, this is displayed multiple times, like, organically through the series too, but they talk about him like he's an extremely hard worker, right? Like, he has an unnatural grit and dedication to training. So stuff like the Rasengan or the Shadow Clones, which he could learn by just like brute force practice, would probably, I mean, the Rasengan's a little bit weird because you do need precise chakra control to use it properly. But then Naruto figured out how to like cheat with it, so it's a little bit different. But, you know, like, I guess anything where he could just dump a ton of chakra into it, he would probably be able to perform.
I think one of the things that makes it hard for Lee to use jutsu, and we learned this in Data Book 4, where it instead of like weird arbitrary stat bubbles, instead it's just like, okay, yeah, the stat idea was kind of dumb. Instead, here's their chakra natures instead. So with Lee, he actually has no chakra natures. So even in this video, like, to headcanon it, we don't even know what he could have learned anyway. Like, we can't be like, oh, maybe he learned a fire style or water. We don't know. Like, so everything is headcanon pretty much, except for just basic jutsu, like the escape jutsu or the doppelganger jutsu. But one thing I'll say about Lee that's kind of interesting is he actually does have chakra anyway. He just can't use ninjutsu, and that's obviously shown with him using the gates, which is amplifying his chakra. But the other thing that's interesting is he also walks on water. So not only does he have chakra, but he actually does have somewhat of a precise chakra control. It's more precise than Naruto and Sasuke's in Land of Waves, at least at the beginning.
Correct.
Because apparently walking on water is harder than walking on trees, which they like spent weeks on or whatever, or days.
And this was after Sasuke was doing this like beyond Genin level jutsu too. That you know, like Kakashi was like, how did he use fire jutsu? That doesn't make sense for Genin. You know,
his chakra shouldn't have been developed enough or whatnot.
Yeah.
There's more implied with Lee is that there's more so some weird property about his chakra that maybe makes it hard for him to control. Because whenever he stops Sasuke and the other Genin's kick at the beginning of the Chunin exam, Sasuke's like, but there's something like weird about the chakra in his arms. You can see it like highlighting his arms all the way through.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make it clear, like, yeah, he always has had chakra, but it's more so like he doesn't have techniques to amplify his abilities, like in that sense. So a great example, and Swag was bringing this up before we started recording, is obviously the body flicker technique. If you guys want, you can go into detail about that, but I think that's a huge deal.
Yeah, so body flicker is just what like everyone in Naruto casts to move at high speed. A lot of people are under the misconception that this is a like rare jutsu or like a specialty thing that only certain people use, like Shisui, because of, you know, his moniker Shisui of the body flicker. And there are definitely ninja who are more talented with the body flicker than others, right? Like again, Shisui or the Raikage or Minato. It also gets even more confusing if you read the manga too, because in like the Viz translation, it's referred to.
All right, so before we continue on to the specifics that they're currently discussing, I do want to talk about Rock Lee's personality and character. So there are parallels between him and Naruto. So I think they made a good distinction here with the type of ninjutsu that Rock Lee would most likely learn. He would most likely learn the ninjutsu that require the most dedication and effort to master, right? There's a lot of parallels between Naruto and Rock Lee. They both have high conviction, right? High resolve. Some of the most strong-willed characters in the entire Naruto verse include someone like Rock Lee. So, right, we can't presuppose what chakra nature he would have because, like Seth pointed out, he doesn't have any. We'd have to simply speculate, right? But whatever chakra nature he does have, he would learn the most difficult ninjutsu, more than likely, because he has the conviction. That we can presuppose, right, just based off his character and his resolve and the life that he lived throughout the timeline of the Naruto history. He has conviction. He would be willing to do what it takes to learn something like the Rasengan, something like the Rasen Shuriken, something like the Shadow Clone Jutsu. So he would have some very well-earned ninjutsu under his tool belt in the event that he had any kind of chakra nature, right? So if he had wind style, he most definitely would learn the Rasengan. It is more than likely, especially if he masters Shadow Clones, because he would implement a similar game plan that Naruto used, which was using the Shadow Clones to increase and speed up his development as a shinobi with ninjutsu. He would most definitely do that, right? If he had a wind style, chakra nature, and had the ability to use Shadow Clones, which again is another ability that's hard to master. So those kind of ninjutsu seem to suit him well and would be some of the ninjutsu he most likely would have. But let's continue on.
As teleportation a lot. They talk about Minato's skill with body flicker, but they say teleportation. So like it sounds like they're talking about flying Raijin, but no, this is like a universal skill. The data book lists the users as Gaara, Kakashi, and then et al, you know, to say like pretty much everyone. So everyone can use it, but if Lee can't use ninjutsu, then he probably shouldn't be able to use it either. Now the thing about this that's weird is Lee isn't listed with a 0 stat in ninjutsu.
Ninjutsu in the 0.5.
0.5.
So it's possible that he can use body flicker, in which case this next point doesn't matter.
That's
but
fair.
If he can't, then like if he suddenly, like if we give him the ability to use ninjutsu and then he's able to learn body flicker, this is like an enormous help for him. because everybody else in the series that we know of should be able to use it. Guy is a ninjutsu user because he can summon the turtle, so even he should be able to use body flicker. So like the fact that Lee is able to move at the same level, generally speaking anyway, as people like this with no body flicker to assist him is insanely impressive. And like if you gave him this massive speed amp, like I mean, I think that, I don't know if it'd make him like the fastest top 1 character in the series, but it'd do a lot for him for sure.
You'd be in the upper
I mean,
echelon,
it makes
for
you
sure.
so much faster that you appear to be almost teleporting, right?
Yeah,
So,
to like regular people.
That's like the whole
so.
gimmick about it.
so it's like a insanely massive like boost to your speed in short, bursts or whatever. So if he was able to use, say, like a body flicker alongside like a powerful like enhancement jutsu, such as like a Rasengan or whatever you want, even with the gates, imagine he could just like move so fast he like teleports ×2 with like a gate, like because he was already teleporting for Gaara anyway, so he's doing it twice as fast in that state. Like, I don't know, that would just be like next level stuff for the tuning exams.
He'd be broken.
Yeah. And people already think Lee like blitzed Edo Madara, remember, on top of the Jubi.
Yeah,
So
when he
then,
kicked him in half. I forgot
so,
about
so
that.
then like super mega speed blitz Edo Madara with body flicker, and he was in base then. Well, he had the QB cloak on, but no gates. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit late to address this in the video, by the way. But one thing I would like to mention, a lot of people, like I've seen this question asked elsewhere, and if you Google like what if Rock Lee could use ninjutsu, you're bound to run into this response as well. A lot of people are under the impression that if he could, he would actually get weaker because his drive to train would like disappear. And I guess that's maybe a sort of valid perspective, but I disagree. We know Lee trained very, very hard, at the very least, at some point when he thought he could still use ninjutsu, because there's like a flashback of him trying rigorously to learn how to use the clone jutsu so that he can pass the graduation exam. Whether he ever actually learned it or not, I don't know. It doesn't seem like he did, because it's not like Guy says he can't use ninjutsu except for the clone jutsu. He learned that so he could pass the graduation. Like, he doesn't say that. He just blanket says Lee can't use ninjutsu. But I mean, even if you take that flashback out of the equation, I just feel like it's not like Lee only started training super hard after he learned he couldn't use ninjutsu, because he had to have learned by trying to use ninjutsu or learn it, that he wasn't able to. And
he's just a hard worker in general, kind of like Naruto is, where they both just like work really hard. And I mean, maybe you could like, fluff it up to be, since they're considered like lesser, they work harder to compensate or something. But from the looks of it, even when like Rock Lee learned, say, the gate release and no one else could on his team, he still trained like extremely hard regardless. So I don't know, it does seem like there's something inside of Lee that really wants to like work hard, and he's like really interested. Even like when he was first introduced to at least like in anime and stuff like that, when we see him as a kid before he really becomes like a genin and gets bullied for not learning ninjutsu, he has that fiery spirit even before he really gets into it. So he just seems like that type of person that would just want to train on some Bruce Lee energy.
Yeah, I mean, he even does it whenever he has the broken legs. Remember, they have to stop him when he's in the hospital because he's trying to train and he's just not supposed to be moving. So it is just like a personality trait Lee has. Like, he just works hard. That's just him.
Well, I mean, we can just go over some examples if he had ninjutsu. So, I mean, I don't think he would ever be able to use Chidori, just in the sense that the Chidori seems to be a technique that amplifies your speed to the point where, like, you need a Sharingan to see almost your own movements. And this is like really, as weird as it sounds, it's not really strength dependent, because it seems to amp your speed, the user speed, to the point where they can barely see it. So even Kakashi, when he's becoming Hokage, like, it makes him move so fast. He's like, I need something else. He makes, the purple Shinden lightning or whatever to compensate for it. So Lee probably isn't using the Chidori against
That's a
Gaara.
good point.
He's not gonna just like pull the Sasuke 2.0 but better or something. But things like Rasengan, Sage Jutsu, Shadow clones, all of that is extremely possible. So I don't know. You can just go into that, I guess.
yeah.
But
So like,
I mean, a turtle that can chase Kisame across an island, like spinning through the air like Master Roshi or something. So,
like I said at the beginning of the video, Anything that just requires like a brute force approach to the training, just like dumping a ton of chakra into it until you finally get it right, it definitely seems like it's up Lee's alley, because that's his sort of training style, right? Like, I'll just kick this tree 10,000 times until my leg is way stronger. He just does like monotonous physical, like rigorous physical exercise.
Exactly.
So
Rigorous.
anything that would that he could learn through like repetition, I think that he'd be able to pick up on. And I think that he would actually learn them at the very least more quickly than the average person would, based on what we're told about him. There are two separate statements about Lee being a genius. So the first one is he is called a genius of hard work. I think it was Guy that said this, right?
Yeah, this guy.
Yeah.
The guy says that.
It's kind of like a nebulous statement. I guess it just means that Lee is really good at like kicking himself into gear.
Yeah, it means he has strong conviction. He has a lot of willpower. That's what that means.
The relevant one that I was getting into here was he is actually just called a genius, like in terms of his raw talent.
Sorry, focusing with the camera.
Not just at working hard, but actually the statement implies the exact opposite of that. When Kakashi learns that Lee's capable of opening the 5th gate, he says something along the lines of like, oh, a feat like that goes beyond hard work. Like, it's not like he could have just learned that through practice. The kid
learning
must be a
the
genius
gates when no one else could. Yeah, is a great example.
Yeah, Guy actually tried to teach his entire team how to open the gates. Neji and Tenten both attempted it, and Lee was the only person who succeeded. Now, we don't know how many gates they were trying to open at the time, but I feel like it makes sense to assume Guy would start with the first gate.
Right, yeah.
Like, maybe we're seeing a point afterwards, like maybe Neji and Tenten could open the 2nd, and they were trying to open the 3rd, and that's where they failed or whatever. But I feel like the most reasonable assumption to make here is that they were trying to open the 1st gate, and Lee was the only one who could. Neji and Tenten couldn't open up any of them. And then Lee makes it all the way up to gate number 5. And we can also assume that this was in a relatively short period of time, that he went from no gates to 5 gates, because he doesn't look very different in this flashback. Like, there's a very clear visual difference between young Lee and Chunin exams Lee. And now Tenten not being able to open the gates, like whatever, that kind of makes sense. But Neji is almost strictly a taijutsu user. He knows some ninjutsu, rotation, and I guess the Byakugan if you count that. But that's like pretty much
even then, you got to remember they have Guy trying to teach them these things. And many years later, so, Jonin Neji, Chunin Tenten that can use the 6 paths tools, super genius Neji, they still can't use the gates from what we know of, and the data book says they can't use them either. And here's Lee going on to the 6th gate. So Kakashi being like, hey, he's got a little bit more than just hard work going on. There's probably a reason for that statement. So I mean, when it comes to other jutsu as well, he'd probably be able to master them a lot more. Now, if he was to do something like Rasengan or things like that, now the actual type that he could use is more debatable. Like, for instance, using a massive or a giant Rasengan, Jiraiya chalked that up to, okay, we'll use the Nine Tails Naruto, or learning Rasen Shuriken, it was because Naruto can make like 1,000 clones to just chill and cut leaves all day, which Lee probably couldn't do. But
the most likely
I guess
have the
Lee using any jutsu with his gates would just massively amplify. So imagine he actually just used a jutsu instead of just randomly just trying to punch down on Gaara when he used the 4th and 5th gate, and Gaara probably wouldn't get up. He'd probably do a little bit more than to brush himself off and then like teleport away. So that's what we believe, and it'd be interesting to see him actually kind of get to the Chunin exams finals and then scrap with Neji, because apparently Lee with the 3rd gate or something was considered like a heavy match or counter, or was on the verge of already defeating Neji, and then like 4 or 5 was like beyond Lee's body limits and he was ripping him apart. But so the fact that like the 3rd gate was gonna possibly contend with Neji it kind of shows you like, wow, if this kid could just do anything else, like Neji just absolutely stands no chance.
Exactly.
At all.
I don't
Agreed.
think that like Neji would be able to fight like 12 Lees, like if Lee could use the Shadow Clone Jutsu and like
Shadow
all of
Clone Gates.
yeah.
Oh,
so
damn,
I
that'd be
think the
broken.
messed up thing about like Shadow Clone Gates is that he probably wouldn't suffer the like negative effects of the gates if his clones used them, right? Like he wouldn't suffer any of the injuries. Like
No, he would. He would, because Naruto gets the like fatigue of his clones.
I don't know about that because I mean of the war arc, but I mean he definitely like it does use your
Yeah.
power at
it
least
uses
to
up
create
like
the
your
clones.
yeah, you have to use up your
So-
chakra, but I don't know if like Lee's clone got its like muscle ripped. If Lee's muscle would get ripped, because then like whenever
I see
Naruto's
what you're
like
saying.
clone got like
Okay.
stabbed through the stomach, then like he would have like a huge hole in his
No,
stomach.
no, not like that. Not
Like
like
when
that. That's not what I was saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like when a clone uses Sage mode, in the war arc, it's not like when it disappeared, whatever, or like got damaged or did all this stuff or used all its KCM energy. The main Naruto lost his, But I mean, like, even without all that, you have to think about all the other jutsu that would be available that would just be able to help him. I think like
Yeah, so to make that crystal clear, shadow clones are basically fatigue amplifiers, right? So as you use more, and as they dissipate and disappear, as the number become more and more depleted, their fatigue adds on to the user's fatigue. However, the damage that they receive does not affect the main user, right? So when one of the clones is punched by an enemy, the main Naruto is not going to feel that punch as soon as that clone dissipates. That's not the case. So to clear it up, if it does add on to your fatigue as you use more and more clones, one, due to the chakra usage to make said clones, and two, due to the fatigue that the clones feel, right? So it adds on top of your own fatigue. I wouldn't say it's a multiplier, because obviously imagine Naruto having 5,000 clones and they all tired, he would die from exhaustion. I don't think it's a fatigue amplifier to that extent in some linear fashion, but I think to some quantitative measure, it adds on top of Naruto's fatigue. But I would argue also, as well, as Naruto gets older, that amplifier decreases because Naruto is now a master of the Shadow Clone Jutsu, with such said Shadow Clones actually being damn near equivalent to his own capabilities as an adult. Early on, he's not as efficient with the Shadow Clone Jutsu, so that's another interesting fact that most people don't know, is that he masters the ability as time goes on, right? By the time he's an adult, he could technically solo the whole Naruto verse, besides Sasuke, right? Let's put Sasuke out of the equation, the Otsutsuki and the cyborgs. If he wanted to, hypothetically, he could send 1,000 clones to cause havoc in the Naruto verse, and he would overtake the entire world, because all those clones would be damn near equivalent to him, relative to him in power. So imagine that. This is an interesting thing to think about. But let's continue on.
story-wise, the only thing that would really change is just kind of part one.
Yeah.
Like, Lee wouldn't have been drunken Lee versus Kimimaro. It'd probably just be normal Lee. Gaara probably would have got mopped up in the prelims pretty hard. Maybe he would have went crazy before the finals or whatever you would say from there. But either way, when it get to the finals, maybe they would ruin their plan, like low-key. Maybe they would lose confidence. There's a lot of things you could say story-wise, but Lee isn't really in the story too much for us to like make those connections anyway, so I guess that's all there is really to say, unless you want to like headcanon like, here he is with flying Raijin.
I think one thing that actually is somewhat plausible, because he does sort of interact with Tsunade for an extended period of time after the tuning exams, albeit this is only because of his injuries, which he might not sustain in this, I guess, quote-unquote timeline. If he were to meet Tsunade, I don't think it's outrageous to believe that he might be able to learn, like, maybe not medical ninjutsu, but, like, the chakra-enhanced
hard
strength.
jutsu.
Yeah, right? Like, Tsunade might be able to teach him how to concentrate his chakra precisely enough to do those, like,
Yeah, that seems
nuclear
like his
bomb
kind of style
punches.
anyway.
Would it just be
I
like
agree.
a Giga multiplier? It'd
Yeah,
just be
I
like
know.
Tsunade punches with gates or something?
Jesus.
Yeah, and
On
then,
top
like,
of like a...
a big old Rasengan. But yeah, thanks Seth and Six for coming down and talking about this very stupid topic.
I hope you guys enjoyed the comments. I think it was cool. It's a cool little thought
Yeah,
experiment,
funny.
but it's kind of interesting. So.
Alright, so there you guys have it. So I definitely want to get my thoughts on this. So we basically got to look at what we do know, right? What we can presuppose in this hypothetical, and what we don't know, where we have to use basic speculation from a rational standpoint. So what we do know is Rock Lee's conviction, right? We know how much willpower someone like Rock Lee has, right? So from that, we can deduce that he would most likely learn ninjutsu that are very difficult to master. Why? Because he has the conviction. As my guy said, he is a genius of hard work, which from that you can extrapolate that he's basically saying, in layman's terms, that he has very high conviction, right? Very high conviction, very high willpower. So that's what we do know, right? And we could also kind of extrapolate what kind of ninjutsu he would most likely have based off his style of battle. He is a close quarters guy, clearly, because in the real Naruto verse he has no ninjutsu, so he has no other choice. He's a close quarter guy. He uses speed, right? He amplifies his ability with his gates. So he would probably have a close quarters type of ninjutsu if we were to talk about this from a rational standpoint and answer some questions that can't be answered. Right, so now going into what we don't know. What kind of jutsu would he have? Well, like we said, close quarters type of ninjutsu. The Rasengan, it's close quarters and it's a difficult ninjutsu to master, clearly as evident by Naruto's journey to learn it. Sage mode, that's a type of amplifier that's good in close quarters. It amplifies your reaction times to people's combat speed, right? Naruto states it himself. When he goes against the third-rate Kage as an Edo, he says, in this mode, my reaction times increase and become better. So that's something that Rock Lee could most definitely use. And from a hypothetical standpoint, we could ask ourselves, what if Rock Lee had the gates plus Sage mode? How would that go? What if he had 5 gates open, 6 gates open on top of Sage mode? Right, so I think there would be more than one source of amplification. You'd have the amp from the 5 gates or the 6 gates, and then you'd have the amp from Sage mode. So his combat speed would increase and his reaction time, making him a very, very formidable opponent. And we can only speculate how powerful he would truly be. Right? That's an ambiguous question. You could say, hey, he might be able to contend with someone like Naruto at the beginning of the war arc, with KCM, or someone like Sasuke at the beginning of the war arc. I still don't think he'd ever get to the level of 6 paths, no matter what ninjutsu he has, right? That's not 6 paths powers, because that's another level. That's another tier that only the top of the food chain will ever reach, right? Someone like Madara, someone like Obito when he became Jubito. Obviously Naruto and Sasuke, the Otsutsuki. Rock Lee wouldn't reach that level, but if I had to kind of give a qualitative assessment on what levels he would reach, maybe a Katsuki level, maybe like mid-tier Katsuki level. I don't know if he'd be as strong as someone like Itachi or Nagato or Obito pre-war arc. I don't know about that, right? It's ambiguous, and it's a unanswerable question as to how strong he would exactly be if he had ninjutsu under his tool belt. Right, and then another question, like I asked at the beginning of this video, was, would his ninjutsu be amped by the gates as well? Right? What if he has a Rasengan and he opens the 6th gate? Would his Rasengan be multiplied as far as its attributes from the gates like his own body is, right? His speed, his strength, his reaction times, etc. Would the AP and the speed of the Rasengan increase as well? Right? Would the overall power of it increase due to the gates? That's another question that is ambiguous, and we can only rationally deduce what most likely would happen. Right? There's nothing empirically to give any foundation for any kind of claim. You can simply only deduce from a rational standpoint what would happen. Right? So yeah, there are definitely ninjutsu he would most likely learn based off his personality, based off his battle style, etc. And I do think it's interesting. Rock Lee is just one of those guys, right, that never had ninjutsu, clearly. A taijutsu user only. And he was very, very revered back in the day, at the beginning of part 1. Obviously, his whole arc kind of died after the Chunin exams, and he was just kind of a side character, obscure character in the background for most of Naruto, right? So, but either way, this is still interesting, and I think it's an interesting conversation to be had out there in the Naruto fandom. So, this is a good video by Swag, Seth, and Six. So shout out to all those guys for this great video. And I'm curious, what do you guys think about this? What would Rock Lee consist of if he had ninjutsu? what ninjutsu do you think he'd have? How powerful do you think he would be? And what are some people he would be able to defeat if this hypothetical were to come true? Let me know in the comment section below. I'm always interested to hear you guys' thoughts. But that's gonna wrap it up, folks, and I'll catch you in the next video. This is Jittery signing out. Peace.